I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is pre-recorded and is called Q&A in the Global Currency Reset. Thanks to studio producer Carmen Stanley and studio director Maurice Jackson and Dolores Harris on audio and prompter. Today's segment is going on air 4 days before the spring meetings of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The minutes of the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF have been approved as issued. The Treaty of Versailles bonds issued by the Federal Reserve Bank in exchange for the world's monetary gold reserves are going to be offset against all country debt. All countries' currencies will be exchanged for the monetary gold reserves of the nations on deposit in the Global Debt Facility. This is pursuant to the bilateral Mansfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement that was agreed at the end of World War II. This treaty remains valid. This is not a theoretical issue. In the teleprompter, I will give you a link to some emails I received from people who thought the World Bank and International Monetary Fund Board of Governors, or the Global Debt Facility, should forget the bilateral Mansfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement. And there's a website which discusses some of the historical bonds that do not enjoy the same status under the bilateral Mansfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement. First, we will discuss some background information. I don't expect there will be time to cover all this information, so I'm asking you to read the teleprompter instead. And from last year, I want to let you see the progress we've been making. The Network of Global Corporate Control, Part 2, and this was in May in 2016. And I said that on the 11th of May in 2016, I went to the offices of the General Counsel of the Council of the District of Columbia and spoke for 15 minutes with one of the lawyers there. And what I spoke to her about, that John F. Kennedy accessed the United States share of gold in the Global Debt Facility 8 days before his assassination. And I've given you a link to the agreement that he signed. The Global Debt Facility is administered by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. I represent them. The Global Debt Facility has foreclosed on the Bank for International Settlements and the corrupt Federal Reserve Bank. The network of global corporate control is in receivership in the Global Debt Facility. That's like Chapter 11 of bankruptcy. All of the salaries of public officials in the federal government and District of Columbia, including federal judges, are now paid from the Global Debt Facility. The Global Debt Facility has informed the Fidelity and Surety Association and several large insurance companies of claims against the fidelity bonds of these public officials. Federal Reserve notes are the Trojan horse by which the network of global corporate control was trying to bring down the United States of America. Instead, the United States' share of the gold on deposit in the Global Debt Facility is going to be minted to replace the Federal Reserve notes. As a transitional measure, the U.S. Treasury dollars on deposit in the Global Debt Facility that were printed by Ronald Reagan after his Grace Commission report showed that United States income taxes were all leaving the country to pay usurious interest on the Federal Reserve notes. These will replace the Federal Reserve notes. And the network of global corporate control took down the link to the Grace Commission report, so I put another link up. People are aware of the second secret constitution that was put into place when the District of Columbia was created in 1871. And they're also familiar with the lawlessness and corruption coming from the District of Columbia and the role of the media and the legal and accounting professions in this corruption. And there were some questions that were asked from Facebook friends. The first question: I've watched your video. I would like to clarify. What do you mean by authorized signatory? And that authorized person by the name of Wolfgang Struck. Thank you. The authorized signatory is the person authorized to sign. Wolfgang is but one of the persons who may sign. Marcos arranged for there to be several persons who could be designated by the Bretton Woods institutions. I have told each of these persons that the Bretton Woods institutions will only recognize their authorizations on a transaction-by-transaction basis. And the second question: I apologize for the inconvenience caused by Google's censoring my Gmail account and another of my Yahoo accounts that's done the same. I've never been censored by either until our communication started with you and with Wolfgang. Likely the trust deposits have been skimmed per your suggested audit. What is the status 6 months later of the letter of intent? And there's a link to that letter. I'm trying to share what I find regarding our cause and give you more exposure through my channels. By the way, other than the Global Debt Facility, does our cause have a given name, or is it Global Debt Facility? And then my answer, and you can see in the teleprompter, that's red. Just this hour, 4 attachments to an email which I read were removed from my email account, and I had to ask the person sending me the email to resend them. One attachment was advice from the CIA to ignore Ferdinand Marcos's documents. That is not going to work for those crooks. Up until now, the crooks have been used to getting their way and were totally lawless. And then I put in square brackets, I had described some horrible thing that the cabal did to try and keep me from going to the spring meetings of the World Bank and IMF. That was last year. And then I said, I am working tirelessly to defeat them. They read my emails and they know that they're finished. And then I said that the letter of intent applies. The cabal tried to bribe me and it didn't work. And then I have in the teleprompter some emails on Turkey and Russia and the bail-ins and some additional questions and answers. This was back in June of 2016. And it said that Turkey took a step in the right direction towards Russia, and Ankara has, this was a spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, who's the official spokeswoman for Russia's foreign ministry. And she said, quote, certain steps and actions of Turkey are taking place. This is a serious step in the right direction. No doubt it has been taken into account. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Monday, that's in 2016, that President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had sent a letter to Russian President Vladimir Putin in which he apologized for shooting down a Russian Su-24 jet while stressing his readiness to make every effort to restore traditionally friendly relations between Russia and Turkey. By the way, all of these leaders they're just actors reading from a script that's written by the Network of Global Corporate Control. And then there's an email from Chris in June 2016 about Bitcoin. Understood, Karen, and thank you for your continued efforts. Let's pray that the Treasury dollars are minted before the Federal Reserve bank and company conspirators take down the Federal Reserve note and crash the entire global electronic financial markets. Well, they can't do that because all of the gold and resources are under the control of what we're calling the Coalition for the Rule of Law. And that's what I wrote on June 28, 2016. The DC TV forum suffices as a question and answer forum, what with time constraints. I handle questions raised during that broadcast, and that was in answer to something that Chris had written me. I was referring to having weekly broadcasted Q&A sessions, like a weekly event. The sessions would contain the most relevant and timely pertaining to the global currency reset. Cheers, Chris. And I wrote in June of 2016, what do you think I've been doing these past years? Best, Karen. And Chris had written me on the 27th of June 2016, hey, Karen, I do watch all of your videos and read all of your PDFs. Respect. Would it be a good idea to have a regular Q&A session for any of your followers who may post questions to help clarify the global currency reset projects? Questions could be sent to you via email and answered by your good self via video or written format. Is that an option? Yes, of course it's an option. And I've put all the links up, and you can contact my email from my website, or you can simply make a comment on a YouTube video, and I'll answer you there. Chris, just look at my videos. I am not your pen pal. Bye. Well, that was not very polite, was it? Chris wrote, thanks, Karen. It's funny you mentioned Switzerland. I had another thought that the city of London would potentially become another variation of Switzerland in terms of the global financial markets and its relationship with the EU and the world. I'm very wary that the City of London, being free of the EU, could become again the world's financial center by attempting to use an alternative financial system to attract the world's wealthiest. I just pray that the coalition is not too late in working together before an alternative financial system is manifested by the network of global corporate control to solve the imminent collapse of the global electronic financial derivatives markets. We're sure they have an alternative system in place to counteract whatever the coalition devises. As you know, the great chess masters are up to 7 or 8 moves ahead of their opponents on the chessboard. This is probably how their plans are devised. This is a concern. Cheers, Chris. And then I've got some information about what happened at the end of World War II. But let me say, first of all, that the Coalition for the Rule of Law is stronger than the network of global corporate control, and we are the ones in charge. Whether the network likes it or not, they have to lump it. And you can see, for example, if you look at the minutes of the spring meetings, you'll see that we've had the same real minutes for the last 3 years. And let me read from the teleprompter about what happened in World War II. The gang of 4 British spies were Winston Churchill, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Mao Zedong. Now, they're not just British spies. They were also agents of the network of global corporate control. These were agents of the network of global corporate control. I have reproduced this website in the teleprompter. After the defeat of the British-German coalition in World War I, Bulldog Winston Churchill decided to try again. This time he was confident of success because he planned on opening a second front against Russia in the east. That second front was the island nation of Japan. A great Chinese patriot and devout Christian named Dr. Sun Yat-sen threatened to undo all his careful planning for another world war. Sun Yat-sen was about to enter Peking in triumph and be acknowledged as the president of a united nation. Instead, he entered as a sick man on the point of death, poisoned by British Secret Service agent Morris Two Gun Cohen. In 1922, Winston Churchill dispatched Secret Service agent Morris Two Gun Cohen to assassinate President Sun Yat-sen. Judas Cohen was able to ingratiate himself with the president of China and became his bodyguard. Sun Yat-sen died of poisoning soon afterward. And there's a picture of Morris Two Gun Cohen in the teleprompter, and perhaps it's on the screen behind me. And Cohen lived between 1887 and 1970. He grew up in the East End of London, in the very neighborhood where Churchill's stepbrother, Prince Jack the Ripper, operated. At age 16, Cohen graduated from Lord Rothschild's School for Juvenile Delinquents, and he was immediately shipped off to Canada to put his spying skills to work. All throughout the Dark Ages in Europe, the fake Jews were known as expert poisoners. Even popes used them to get rid of rivals. After arriving in China from Canada in December 1922, Cohen was able to have himself appointed bodyguard to Sun Yat-sen. Cohen's spying cover in Canada was petty criminal, thief, pimp, bootlegger, and devout Jew. And by the way, there's a lot of mention of religions in this teleprompter. I've just taken it from the website. But we're going to be postponing all of the work on getting the corruption out of the various religions. We're going to tackle the money system first, because it's going to be very difficult to untangle the challenge of corruption in religion. We'll get a good experience first in tackling the money system. Okay, returning to the teleprompter then. The next day, Cohen returned to Rue Molière. Sun examined the railway contract. All appeared in order. When C.V. Cummins ship docked a fortnight later, Cohen met him at the pier. Sun and Cummins signed the contract. The following day, Cohen rode back to Sun's home to give Sun the hard sell. Cohen turned on his best salesman charm and snagged the job he wanted, that of a bodyguard to the revered leader of China and China's dispossessed. Sun bestowed upon Cohen the title of Fugan, adjutant. Cohen's plans were complete. He soon adopted the pidgin name of Cowhen. Later, he would be occasionally referred to as the Chinese-sounding Ma Kun. Yet Cohen had little use for the new appellation or the brothel-type Cantonese he had picked up in Canada. Most of Sun's entourage spoke English. Sun had been educated in Honolulu and Hong Kong. His bright and beautiful wife and her sisters and brothers had studied in the United States, and many of his underlings attended Western-run Chinese schools, Levi Two-Gun Cohen. With such a great Christian leader as Dr. Sun Yat-sen, China was well on its way to becoming a great and glorious republic like the United States. Sun Yat-sen is revered by all Chinese as the founder of their republic. He is literally the George Washington and Abraham Lincoln of China. He was also a devout Christian whose whole life was given to one purpose: the liberation of his people from superstition, despotism, and colonialism. President Sun Yat-sen, the 59-year-old president, was assassinated by a British spy named Morris Two-Gun Cohen. It was the foulest deed since the assassination of President Lincoln. Judas Cohen left for Canada just before the president died. Bodyguard Cohen can be seen behind his victim. Before his greatest victory, when he should have entered Peking in triumph, he entered as a sick man on the point of death. After an operation in the Rockefeller-financed Peking Union Medical College, he went to reign with the true Son of Heaven on March 12, 1925. Cohen didn't want to shed any crocodile tears at his funeral, so he left for Canada just before the president died. As Sun lay in bed in Beijing, the Chinese in Vancouver feted Cohen as a returning hero. As soon as the Chinamen found out who he was, they certainly showered him with attention, giving us a special dinner for which we were not permitted to pay, recalled Lee Sereth, who visited Chinatown that winter with Cohen. By January, Cohen the dandy, wearing spats and sporting the false title of general, arrived in Edmonton. He regaled his friends with tales of the Orient, informing them that during the Canton customs crisis, Sun wanted him to take over the running of the customs. And there's a quote in the teleprompter for which book he took that information from. General Chiang Kai-shek, a brother-in-law and fellow Christian, took up the mantle of the martyred president. Sun and Chiang at the opening of the Whampoa Military Academy. That's a picture in the teleprompter. General Chiang Kai-shek was the brother-in-law of President Sun Yat-sen and his top general. The assassination of Dr. Sun Yat-sen left a power vacuum in the country, which the British were quick to exploit. Mao Zedong was financed by Cohen from Hong Kong. Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, his dates of his life were 1887 to 1975. Churchill created the Communist Party in China in order to assist the Japanese when they invaded Manchuria. This was to assist his fellow spy Adolf Hitler when he invaded from the west. Mao Zedong's long march toward Manchuria. After the assassination of President Sun Yat-sen, petty criminal Morris Cohen became the banker and financier for the Communist Party. The Long March was toward Manchuria, which was conquered by the Japanese in 1931 with no resistance from the Communists. And Mao Zedong, his dates of his life were 1893 to 1976. The legend of British Secret Service agent Mao Zedong was born during the Long March. Banker Morris Cohen provided the funds for his communist army. He was marching toward Manchuria so he could link up with the Japanese invaders of Manchuria. The Long March toward Manchuria lasted from October 34 to October 35, followed the footsteps and the finances of Mao Zedong and his communists, and they lead right to Blenheim Palace and the Bank of England. A typical British Secret Service false flag operation gave the Japanese an excuse to invade Manchuria. The Japanese made the deposed Kwantung Emperor the new ruler of their colony. The Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931 and the puppet emperor Puyi 1906 to 1967. As planned, Mao did nothing to oppose the Japanese when they invaded China in 1937. That burden fell to the army of Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek. And Chiang Kai-shek, broadcasting in 1937, Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek hurled defiance at the Japanese when they invaded China in 1937. The Chinese referred to the Japanese as dwarf bandits, and they were determined to expel the invaders. All Mao did for his country was give lectures and bribe Chinese into becoming communists. Mao Zedong lecturing at the Lu Xun Arts Institute in 1938. For the man who said that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun, he did very little shooting at the Japanese invaders. On the other hand, he had a very close relationship with fellow agent Joseph Stalin. And there's a picture of a dwarf bandit about to behead a Chinese man. The rape of Nanking was one of the worst war crimes in the history of the world. Nanking, now called Nanjing, was then the capital of the Republic of China. Over 300,000 men, women, and children perished. And there's a picture in the teleprompter of a dwarf bandit gloating over Chinese corpses. Despite the terrible casualties, the Chinese fought on to liberate their country. One of the reasons why the Japanese decided to attack Pearl Harbor instead of Russia was the high price that the Chinese were making them pay for invading their country. a British spy was assigned to help General Chiang Kai-shek. In December 1941, Churchill ordered the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor because he wanted to draw the United States into the war. By that time, it was apparent to all that Germany would lose without Japanese help from the East. The brave Chinese were still not defeated, and the Japanese army, despite help from the Communists, was in no condition to invade Russia from Manchuria. And then there's a blurb about General Joseph Stilwell. The man sent to China by Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall was named General Joseph Vinegar Joe Stilwell. In reality, he was a British spy sent to sabotage the Chinese war effort. He deprecated the military skills of Chiang Kai-shek and referred to him derisively as Peanut. I want to thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. We've been talking about the Treaty of Versailles bonds issued by the Federal Reserve Bank that are going to be offset against all country debt. All countries' currencies will be exchanged for the monetary gold reserves of the nations on deposit in the Global Debt Facility. The bilateral Mansfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement and the Power Transition Model from the U.S. War College will put an end to world wars instigated by the network of global corporate control. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.